You are in the jungle. I'm Matt Edwards. Thank you for being with me as the Cincinnati Bengals head to Los Angeles this weekend, where they'll take on the 6-3 Chargers. Jim Harbaugh getting it done in year one with Justin Herbert and company. We'll talk about that. We'll break that down. There's a lot of fun numbers with the Chargers I'm going to get to. It's going to feel, I'll tell you right now, it's going to feel a little robotic for me in the beginning because I usually don't just do a bunch of stats and that kind of stuff. But I really think they kind of tell a story of what we're building up to Sunday night. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about what my expectations are for the Bengals. A lot of people right now are like, well, the Bengals can still make a Super Bowl run. Other people are like, well, the Bengals should be looking at mock drafts. I'm going to try to put us somewhere in the middle. And I think that's where it makes sense to be with this team right now because they're still right in the thick of it. There's 7 games left. We'll get into all that. It's going to be a fun episode. For me anyways. You might hate it, but I'm going to have fun sitting here and talking into this camera. You are in the jungle. I'm Matt Edwards. Thank you for being here. Let's start with those Chargers, formerly of San Diego, currently with Los Angeles, playing in that hellhole known as SoFi Stadium. I've been there. It's not a football stadium. It's a giant indoor mall where there happens to be a field in the middle, and you pay $17 for a Mick Ultra. Let's start with that team. They have won 3 straight games. So if you're kind of doing the scouting report, like we all know, if you look just on the surface, they're 6-3. Jim Harbaugh, good everywhere he goes. Justin Herbert has a cannon, is really good, but hasn't necessarily always had the pieces around him or the coaching around him to make him go. No more excuses with Harbaugh, right? Let's look at where they're at. They've won 3 straight, and they've won 3 straight by double digits. That looks good. Except it's against the Titans, Browns, and Saints. Those teams all suck. Throw it out. They're 6-3. Okay, who are their 3 losses to? Chiefs, Steelers, Cardinals. All good teams. So the Chargers are doing what they should do. They're winning the games they're supposed to win. They're losing some games, and they've been tight. They lost to the Steelers by 10 early in the season. That was in Pittsburgh. They lost to Kansas City by a touchdown, and they lost to Arizona by 2 points. So they're kind of, these 2 teams, outside of the records, these 2 teams mirror each other, I feel like, quite a bit. Again, outside of the record, which means a lot in football. So, 9th best record in football, 6th best in point differential, and they're allowing just 13.1 points per game. Stick with me through these numbers, okay? I promise I'm not going to sit here and read you articles and box scores the whole time. 13.1 points per game. Best in the NFL. That means they are only allowing the other team to score, on average, 13 points a game, and that's better than the number 2 team by more than a field goal. That's really, really good. They have not played an offense of the Bengals caliber this season. I don't know. They've got the Bengals in Baltimore. Maybe they're good and they hold them to closer to 13. Maybe it all falls apart for them and they allow 40. There's a lot of unknowns going into this week. It feels like you have a good read on everything or not a read at all. Because again, it's funny to say like, oh, the Chiefs offense, they haven't played a good offense. The Chiefs offense hasn't looked good this year. I think they're like 16th in points scored per game or something like that. We're going to learn a lot. And I know I said that about the Eagles game, but the Eagles like went on a tear, by the way. They're 7-2 all of a sudden. So we can kind of feel better about that one. But this is, I guess what I'm getting to is neither team has a signature win. Chargers' best win is against the Broncos, who are 5-5. They look sharp. Bo Nix looks sharp, but they're a 5-5 team. Bengals don't really have a signature win. They beat the Giants, Panthers, Browns, and Raiders. All teams that stink. All teams that should be shipped out into the woods to play the rest of their games. Both teams looking for that signature win. And other than that, so between the 2 of the Bengals and the Chargers, they have 10 total wins. And all of their wins are against teams with either 2 or 3 wins on the year. This is a prove-it game. I'm glad, or I should say I'm not glad I did the whole number thing. I feel like I'm very, very robotic, very stuck now because I was just interested in the numbers, but I don't really have a lot more to say on that. But that's where they're at. That's where they're at. It's a signature win for both teams. And while we're sitting here, if you're a Bengals fan, saying they got to have this one, the Chargers are probably saying the same things more in a, hey, we need to prove we belong type way. And if they get it, they'll move to 7-3. And if the Bengals don't get it, they'll move to 4-7. This is a massive game. You cannot fall. You cannot go into December. The Cincinnati Bengals cannot go into December 3 games below 500. And that's what would happen if they do not win on Sunday night in Los Angeles. They'll go into December with a losing record, but you got to hope it's 5-6 instead of 4-7 or you're in some deep trouble because you still got the Steelers twice this year. And Steelers magically just seem like a legit Super Bowl contender, which they got the Ravens this week. Who knows, man? But that's where we're at with that. Okay, moving on from that sloppy first segment. The good news for the Cincinnati Bengals, the Chargers are average on offense. Can you name a receiver who plays for the Los Angeles Chargers? Think about it for a second. Their leading receiver, a fella named Ladd McConkey, first-round pick. Great name, but they do not have any receivers, and thank God they do not, because we all know what this Bengals secondary has been like this year. The Chargers have not scored 30 points in a game this year, and the Bengals kind of finding a balance here. I think that's the theme of this episode, finding a balance where this is a team kind of in the middle of the road, better than average, but not a juggernaut, not anyone suspects will win the Super Bowl this year, kind of a middle-of-the-road team that the Bengals have an opportunity to beat, get their season back on track, get some momentum building, get a win where you actually walk away from it feeling like, hey, you beat a team that's not going to be picking in the top 10 in April's draft, May's draft, whenever it is. They got to quit moving it around. So, Cam Taylor-Britt, Merry Christmas, brother. You finally get a game where you should be able to keep up. Secondary, happy holidays to you. DJ Turner, I know you got thrown in there. Hey, you were a second-round pick. Time to do something. Safeties, Von Bell, I know you're getting old, brother. Geno Stone, I know it's been rough. Time to do something. This is a week for a lot of things to get turned around, and in the secondary, I think is probably where they could use the most improvement. So a Chargers team that doesn't really have any receivers, get a little confidence going into the bye. I always think back, and I know there's no real correlation here, but when the Bengals went on that 2021 Super Bowl run, Eli Apple was a big part of that run. Before the bye week in 2021, he was so bad. He was terrible. Something clicked after the bye week, and he was a very solid cornerback the rest of the year, opposite of Chidobe Awuzie, made for a pretty good set of corners that played a big factor in the Bengals making a Super Bowl run. If they can somehow, some way, bottle up some magic like that again, just to get into the playoffs, that would be nice. That's where I'm at with this team. We'll get to it in a minute as far as the expectations go. And as far as I mentioned Geno Stone there, I mean, this is a chance to right the ship for the Bengals free agent class this year. Geno Stone looked okay for a couple weeks, and he hurt the leg, and then he was apparently okay, but hasn't looked good. And then Sheldon Rankins, I don't know if he's played, the system being different's hurting, but he has not looked like the guy they're paying $13, $14 million a year to, whatever it is. Cam Taylor-Britt going into a year where he could have got paid this offseason. He absolutely will not now. Big chance for a lot of guys to right the ship because this is a Chargers offense. Yeah, they've got an excellent quarterback. Yeah, they've got a pretty good two-headed running back duo in J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, former Ravens, both of them. But this is a team that can be taken advantage of. This is a team where no receiver is going to scare you. This is a team where no receiver should break 3 tackles for an 84-yard touchdown. This is a Chargers team where the Bengals should be able to finally just keep a team like under 30. The Chargers haven't scored 30 this year. Don't be the first ones to let them score 30 this year. Please, for the love of God, do not let that happen. But we'll see. Chance to right the ship. Chance to right the ship. Will it happen? I don't know. The Bengals just need some guys, and I think I've said this before, some guys who are playing like at a D+ to be like a C+. Some guys who have been a 3 out of 10 to just be a 5 out of 10. I know I've said this before. Just be closer to average than awful. Can you do that? T. Higgins looked good on Wednesday's practice. I'm recording this on Thursday. T. Higgins out there running around, doing normal things that NFL players do. He'll probably be listed as questionable, but you got to feel good. He was listed as limited in Wednesday's practice. Orlando Brown Jr. did not practice. He was in sweatpants, but he did the walkthrough. And as Zach Taylor likes to say, if you're doing the walkthrough, we expect that you play. He and T. Higgins both did it. So getting both of them back would be massive. We all know the numbers, how much better this team is with T. Higgins on the field. And that's what happens when you have an elite quarterback and 2 true number 1 receivers on the field. You can kick some butt. So hopefully that can happen, both trending in the right direction. That would be a big boost, and the Bengals need all the boost they can get at this point in the year. So if you look at the schedule, for the last 6 weeks, the Bengals are either playing like a legit Super Bowl contender like Baltimore or Kansas City or the Eagles. Or no, they didn't play Kansas City in the last 6 weeks. Eagles and Ravens, the two bird teams. There are several other bird teams, but those are the ones the Bengals have played. The last 6 weeks, they've played those two teams half the time. Or their other 3 games have been against the Browns, Giants, and Raiders. Total stinkers. Total teams. I think the Giants hold the number 1 overall pick right now. We all know the Browns are trash, and the Raiders have really just kind of fallen apart as the season's gone on. Just don't really have the roster to compete regardless of who the head coach is there. So again, this is kind of that middle ground game. I know the Chargers are better than middle ground, but they're definitely more second tier than first tier. This is a game we find out if the Bengals are as good as we think they should be and what they really can be. So this is kind of the one where, like, I feel like we say this every week, but if you don't win here, what are you going to win? This is kind of the one. For all you people saying, hey, it's time to look at mock drafts, I think this is probably the one where if the Bengals can't get a win, if they go into December under 3 games under 500, maybe you're right. Maybe it's time to shut this thing down. But see, 4-7, they could still go 10-7. There's a lot of football left. But this is kind of a game you have to have. Then you get the bye week, get healthy, and then you have Dallas, Tennessee, and Cleveland. Those 3 teams all suck. This is a huge opportunity. You got to get this one. You get the Steelers at home, and then you get that stretch I just mentioned. Bengals have to win 5 in a row. You got to get this one and then the 4 after it. And then you get Denver at home. Bengals have to win 5 in a row. That gets them to 9-6. I guess if they win 4 of the next 5, that would put them at 8-7. Yeah, you don't want to go into the final 2 weeks of the season with Denver and Pittsburgh. You got to win 5 in a row if you're Cincinnati. I mentioned at the top of the show, this is going to be a shorter episode, my expectations have changed for this team. The Bengals can't win the division. If it were only Pittsburgh or Baltimore sitting there with 2 losses and they play each other this week, then you say maybe they could win. They're not going to win the division. If they make the playoffs, they will be playing on the road in the wild card weekend opener. I say that to say that if you're willing to come with me and shift your expectations, shift them to kind of the way things used to be, which I know you don't want to go back to those days, but there was a time, most of the time of my life anyways, for the Cincinnati Bengals, when just to see them in that in the hunt playoff graphic was a lot of fun. And I know expectations have changed with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and this team they have right now, but you got to control what you can control. And if you're willing to put yourself in the frame of mind, in the mindset of, man, if the Bengals could get to the playoffs, that would be cool. I promise you the season will be a lot more fun. And isn't that why we watch sports? Maybe some of you are degenerate gamblers, sure. But aren't most of us watching sports to enjoy ourselves? There was a time with this franchise where just being on that graphic as we inch toward Thanksgiving was a lot of fun. Put yourself back in that mindset. It's more fun that way. I promise you. Sitting around, some of you aren't going to be happy no matter what. And as someone who is a proud Ohio State alumni who lives in Columbus, I can tell you a lot of Ohio State fans miserable all the time because it's either win by 50 or the game sucked. You don't want to be like that. You want to be like Indiana, who's thrilled to be number 5 in the country with 10 wins, despite the fact that you haven't beat anyone. Just trust me on this one. You control what you can control as a fan. You can't control anything that happens on the field. You can gripe about it all you want. Adjust your expectations for this season. That's what I've done. At this point, I want the Bengals to sneak into the playoffs because that's really the only thing they can do. They're not going to get the 5 seed. The 6 or the 7 is really the best case scenario. And have a chance to go in on Wild Card Weekend, go to Buffalo, go to Pittsburgh, go to Baltimore, and pull an upset. That is my best case scenario. That is where my head is at. And if you adjust your expectations and understand that's as good as it's going to get this year, or at least until January, you'll be a lot happier. Don't be miserable. That's no fun. Put your mind in the place where it's like, hey, just get in, And then once they get in, I can promise you, if you're the number 2 seed, whether it's the Steelers, the Ravens, the Bills, maybe the Chiefs fall off a little, maybe the Texans get hot. Whoever you are, if you're the 2 seed and you've got Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Trey Hendrickson coming into your house after you've had an excellent season to secure the second best record in the AFC following the 2-time defending champion, Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, you'll be terrified. You know who won't be terrified? Joe Burrow, because he's been there, he's done that. He's gone on the road and won big playoff games. Jamar Chase won't be scared. He's gone on the road and won big playoff games. Von Bell's been there. Logan Wilson's been there. Ted Karras has been there. T. Higgins has been there. Zach Taylor's been there. Adjust the expectations. Have some fun this year. One for the road, as we're only about 16 minutes in, but I told you it's going to be a short one. I got stuff to do. I was talking to my dad the other day, as I often do. He's a nice fella. I like him. I'm glad he's my dad. How much longer are we going to do this thing where the NFL... It's been a week now since Thursday night game, and Joe Burrow gets slapped in the helmet and should have got another crack at the 2-point conversion that could have potentially won the game in Baltimore, and this would be a much happier podcast because the Bengals would be 5-5. How much longer are we going to do this thing with all the technology and all the money the NFL has, where when it's a clear and obvious foul, they don't just buzz down and say, hey, throw the flag, here's what it is, do whatever comes next, as if one of you had thrown the flag on the field. How much longer until we get this thing figured out? You can go back and look. I don't like to sit here and say, you can go back and look, put it this way. You can go back to 3 plays this year. 3 plays where the Bengals have gotten hosed by the refs. Week 1, Mike Gesicki catches a touchdown. They say it wasn't a touchdown. 2 days later, the NFL comes out and says, yes, it was. By the way, the next play, Tanner Hudson fumbles. The whole game turns right there. The Bengals don't take the lead. The Bengals never get the lead. The Bengals fall to the Patriots, start 0-1 on the season, and the Patriots stink. So right there, there's one play, week 1. Week 2, 4th and 16 in Kansas City. They get, I don't know if I want to say they get bailed out because it's a ticky-tack foul. It's just not one you call in that situation. If that's a Hail Mary, which it essentially is at 4th and 16, you don't call that. And then, of course, Thursday night in Baltimore, the most glaring of any of them, Joe Burrow gets whacked in the helmet. Mike Gesicki's there again. He gets mauled. It should have been defensive pass interference. I'm not sitting here trying to complain. This isn't about the Bengals because every team has these stories this year, except the Chiefs. Every team has these stories this year. When does the NFL do something about it? If the Bengals just get one of those calls, they're 500 right now instead of 2 games under 500. Just one of the 3. One of the 4, really. When do they do something? Like, why? When it's a problem, this is not a controversial issue. Everyone gets it. Everyone gets that we've got 4K TVs now and 17 different angles to dissect these. Why waste the time of the officials huddling, going over, looking at the replay review and a little porta-john, and then coming back out and getting it wrong because they're not looking at big screen. I got a bigger screen on this laptop probably than they do in the little review booth down on the field. How long till they get it right? How long until the NFL says, yeah, this makes a hell of a lot more sense, doesn't it? How many teams have been jobbed? How many teams have missed a playoff spot because of the NFL's stubbornness to flip this thing? To say, hey, yeah, it probably makes sense just to have a guy we pay, $40 an hour to. Whatever. Nothing to the NFL. Pay him $100 an hour. Pay him $400 an hour. Roger Goodell probably makes that during every time he goes to the bathroom throughout the day. How long, man? Because the Bengals have, those are three calls. 2 of them universally agreed upon. The NFL came out and said 1 was wrong. We all know the Thursday night situation. If the Bengals, let's say they even split those. Let's say they only get 1 of the 3 that I'm bitching about here. They're 5-5 right now. How long? It's a long season. I'm getting through it. I'm glad you're here getting through it with me. 7 games left, a lot of football left, but the Bengals, I think, have to win 5 in a row right now. It's set up for them to do. Their next 2 will be their hardest. Chargers, Steelers, and then things cool off a little bit as they get the Cowboys, Titans, and Browns. There's no easy games in the NFL. By the way, 3 of the next 5 in primetime. So there's that. Okay, around the AFC North this week, out of the jungle, I like to call this segment. We have Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Banger of a weekend, by the way. Thursday night game, once again, Philadelphia and Washington. That's going to be an awesome game. At 1 o'clock on Sunday, we get the Steelers and the Ravens. I think we want to root for the Steelers because they have fewer, not root for the Steelers, just we will be rooting against the Ravens. That way, because the Bengals still have games against the Steelers, although I don't really know that it matters. And then at 4:25, we have Bills Chiefs. And then, of course, the headliner, Bengals Chargers. So the Browns have the Saints. If you know anyone who's watching that game, please say a prayer for them. That will be miserable. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Bengals just got to win. They got to win 5 in a row. That's where I'm putting my money in right now. If they want to make the run, if they want to be the team we think they can be, they need to win 5 in a row right now. Falcons at the Broncos this week, by the way. That's a big one for the Bengals. Need Atlanta to pull that one off. So there's your rooting guide. Other teams we're interested in, really the Chargers and the Colts. Who do the Colts have this weekend? The Jets. So, yeah, we need Aaron Rodgers to pull that off as Anthony Richardson gets back into action for the Colts. Need the Colts to lose, need the Broncos to lose, need the Bengals to win more than anything. Everything else takes care of itself if the Bengals win. Got to win 5 straight right now. That's what I'm saying. I'm sticking to it. I'm looking forward to it. If you like the show, it's called In the Jungle. Give it a rating. Subscribe to it on YouTube. My name is Matt Edwards. You can find me on Blue Sky as well as Twitter. Doing that now too. Everyone says they're going to do it, but it's still kind of clunky. We'll figure it out. Find me wherever you want. Come over to my house. Don't come inside, but I'll wave to you out the window, something like that. Appreciate you tuning in. We'll do it again. It'll be out Monday morning after the Bengals win their first of 5 consecutive. Thanks for tuning in.